Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is City Talk. The Jets Stadium, the extension of the number 7, the West Street Tunnel, the 2nd Avenue subway, commuter tax, photo ban, toll booth closings. Here to talk about all of this is Gene Russianoff, staff attorney for NYPIRG, New York State's largest student-directed consumer, environmental, and government reform organization. He also serves as staff attorney to NYPIRG's Straphangers campaign. Welcome, Gene.
Thank you.
Let's start. Jets, talk to me about the stadium. You've got a suit. Give us some background. Give us the process. Give us your suit.
Well, there are a couple of reasons why we're in it, but the biggest one is that the process by which the MTA sold its property was a poor one, and it cost the riding public. They did an appraisal on how much their yards would sell for, and they came in at $923 million. So what did they do? They had a bidding process that was 27 days long, the shortest in their history.
Wait, before we get to the bidding process, the Jets were going to give them $100 million before Cablevision threw the bomb and forced this out in the
that's
open.
True, it made some competition. And I felt I was sort of optimistic about the process that might ensue because it's such a valuable piece of property and it's waterfront property. But the only two people who were in a position to bid on it is both the Jets and MSG. And no offense to either one of them, but it's not enough money. And we think the judge should throw them all out and the process should start again. And our review of the case law is that the government has a lot of discretion. State courts don't like to interject their own opinion, but there's a line. And when a public authority engages in improvident behavior and they have favorites, it hurts the public. Latest we saw was the canal where they sold valuable canal property for $30,000. It's unbelievable. I know. And so in this case, whether it's $250 million or $200 from the Jets or $400 from MSG, the property is worth almost $1 billion. Who wouldn't bid on? Who wouldn't take a property at that value? And every time they sell something, they have the staff do what's called a staff summary. It's like, here are the pros and cons of each side. So and they always come up with a recommendation, and the board almost always follows the recommendation. This time there was no recommendation. And the reason why is they had 10 days to review these complicated bids, and they didn't give anybody time to really put in their oar. And if they get less money from the sale of that land, it'll be less cars repaired on the subways, less new buses, less track.
Higher fares for us, more schmutz in the subway.
It's a bad deal. So we're hopeful we'll be listened to. Now, MSG has a different argument. They're a disgruntled vendor, of which the MTA has quite a huge number of them. And so they just say their bid was better than the Jets bid. And I think the judge is likely to throw up his arms in the air. We'll see. I mean, they made a good argument in court, but our argument is different, which is throw them all out, start again. And Judge Kahn at the state Supreme Court, my view of him is that he's a fair-minded person. And hopefully he won't be influenced by the highly commercial nature of the interest. And I should make very clear that we have never taken a dime from Madison Square Garden, or we ever. In fact, we picketed them in the early 90s for their tax
Well, you're an equal opportunity scorch.
So, it's an amazing, for me, the stadium is an amazing issue about the city and its future. And I think it's a mistake to put a stadium in Manhattan. The traffic alone, and even their own EI, environmental impact statement, shows that there's going to be tremendous impacts from doing so.
But they're building no parking.
Yes.
7 cars. I mean, there's some ridiculously low number of cars that they expect.
They've done studies which they claim show that the vast majority of people will come by public transportation.
I've looked at those surveys, and they're all suspect. Everyone.
Exactly. And Madison Square Garden, which is above New Jersey Transit, the Long Island Railroad, and the subways, still doesn't get the kind of numbers they're predicting for the Jet Stadium.
Absolutely.
And to go to that convention center, people take cabs, they drive, and so I think expanding the convention center is a good idea and will help the city, but to do it at but creating a 30-story barrier between the waterfront and the rest of New York with the stadium is just the wrong approach. And there hasn't been a debate about it, because on this one, I think the mayor's people really don't think there should be checks and balances. If the mayor wants it, he should get it.
Yeah, clearly it seems that they have made, if not a strategic error, a tactical error in doing it behind the scenes. It was a backroom deal. It was negotiated in secret rather than go through more traditional land use review by public authorities. They didn't trust popular government, and I think they got burned because they might have gotten it without being
I think it's
sneaky.
a mistake. We've taken the same position for the Brooklyn Arena that Radnor wants to build and the Jet Stadium, which is that, you know, having the uniform land use review process, having community boards comment, borough presidents comment on it, and the council enact it, they've all behaved responsibly over the years. And so if the project is a good one and will stand up to scrutiny, then why not have it stand up to scrutiny? Because you can say, well, look, it just wasn't me, the mayor, the council agreed, and the borough president agreed. But I think they're worried what people really think of their priorities.
Well, clearly they made a strategic judgment that they didn't want to do that because they felt they couldn't get it through.
Yes, and I think it was a mistake, and I think it's haunting them right now. I think they're surprised by the level of opposition to the project, and you know, I think there are a lot of people in the business community who think it's a bad idea, but it's tough to buck a mayor.
Not only buck a mayor, but buck a deputy mayor for economic development who's going to look at all your projects.
It's true. And then, you know, I'm very involved in trying to improve the city's campaign finance system, which I think is one of the best in the nation. But, you know, it's true the mayor can use his own money, but that 2012 committee for the Olympics, whether you like the Olympics or don't, all the big businesses, they've all made major contributions. They've all been pressured to give money, and so in some ways it's very identical. And
also, I mean, the bidders that came in with the Jets in this round of bidding, clearly, I mean, are they currying favor with the mayor?
It's worse than that, because they signed what's called a non-binding agreement. So they said they're interested, but they're not committed to anything. And so they got $440 million worth of non-binding commitments. I could get that. You know,
I'll give you it.
It's worth the paper. It's worth the paper it's written on.
Talk to me about let's get back to transit and how it relates to this project, the extension of the 7 line. We've talked about sort of the main capital projects, 2nd Avenue subway, extension of the 7, the Long Island Railroad link, and the link from the airport to downtown. First of all, prioritize those, and then let's talk about the 7 line.
Well, for me, it would be certainly 2nd Avenue subway would be the first, followed by linking the Long Island Railroad to Grand Central, because that would make life a lot easier for 75,000 commuters and for hundreds of thousands of subway riders who have to travel with them. And both projects are fairly well advanced, and they get high recommendations from the federal government. So they're good projects. They're a lot of money. One's $3.6 billion, 2nd Avenue for the first phase, and $6.3 billion for East Side Access. So I know why people are debating them, because they don't come cheap. Big bucks. And then the rest of the projects, in my mind, you have to wait for the 2 big things to be completed, even if it's going to take to 2012 or 2015. And I know other groups like the Regional Plan Association, which is a pretty smart group, thinks that a number 7 extension is a useful thing for the city, but not till way down the line, like maybe 2020, when the volumes of riders will justify it. Because what the mayor doesn't say is that the city says it's going to build it. They're going to build it by using the MTA's rail yards to finance the project. But then it's up to the MTA to operate it and to sustain whatever operating losses are involved in it. And
they've got severe both capital and operating budgetary constraints.
And then something like the rail link, I want to see more studies before we even decide whether we think it's the right project. We were very opposed to the original idea, which was to steal a tunnel, existing tunnel from the subway system. They were going to boot the C-train riders, make them switch at downtown Brooklyn. And there was a fight over that, and the proponents backed down. Now they're talking about a new tunnel, and my friends at the Regional Plan Association think in the law, they have a very optimistic view. They think they'll build a 2nd Avenue subway in the city, and that it'll go under the river through a new tunnel and create capacity to Brooklyn.
This sounds a little utopian.
I know. Well, you know, you got to give them credit for being visionaries, but the last new tunnel in the city took, the 63rd Street tunnel took 20 years to build. So you got to be a little skeptical about new tunnels.
Okay, so let's go back to the 7. The 7's going to cost $2.83 billion.
It's really interesting. They say $1.9 billion is like a markdown sale, so that sounds cheaper. And then it's only the first phase of the line, because they would build from Times Square down to I guess 11th Avenue and 34th Street,
right,
and the station at 42nd Street would not be built, and you would have to. That would be the second phase of the project. So God knows how much it really costs, because stations are very expensive these days. You got to make them accessible, well lit, safe, secure in the 9/11 world, and so they're very expensive.
Okay, now you build this subway. Let's say the mayor gets his way and he gets the subway built. What relationship does this have to the Jet Stadium? Suppose, I mean, there's certain possibilities. The Jet Stadium either gets built or doesn't get built. We either get an Olympic bid or we don't get an Olympic bid. If we don't get an Olympic bid and this Jet Stadium is not built, is it worth doing the number 7?
Well, you know, what RPA says is that even without a stadium and with residential development, you will down the line need more transit service, because there'll be, it depends what you build there. People have talked about residential housing and the value of it, and those people are going to need access to the subway, but they're not going to need access to the subway by the year 2012, because there are going to be very few buildings built and very few people out there. So, and it matters in transit. Timing matters for everything, because if you want to do Second Avenue subway, you can't do it at the same time you do all these other projects. They all fall apart. And so I'm hoping that somehow someone creates a consensus among the parties, because it's just very frustrating. And the business community is all over the lot about these projects. When you really ask them, they say they want everything. But they're the same people who don't want taxes raised and are concerned about the quality of city services. So, you have to set priorities.
Jet Stadium. Let's go to the stadium itself. This Olympic bid, we don't get the Olympic bid. This stadium doesn't get built.
Well, that's what I think. Which is why I think we should wait till July 5th, 2005, when the International Olympic Committee makes its decision. I know the mayor thinks that with or without an Olympics, the West Side needs to be developed. I think there's a consensus about that. The issue is where, when, and how, and with what resources. And I think there's a lot of debate left in those questions. But his view, I mean, he's used the Olympics as sort of the carrot. We have to make a decision. They're waiting for us to say something about the stadium. But a lot that the Olympic Committee wants, this New York and U.S. Olympic Committee wants to build, it still doesn't exist. The Olympic Village and many of the venue sites. So I think we can wait till July to decide. That's my opinion.
Let's talk about the politics. We've got the Public Authority Control Board. We've got Shelley Silva. We've got Joe Bruno. They have to, and Governor Pataki, they've got to have a unanimous vote. Any one of them's got a veto. Let's look at Shelley Silva here. Shelley is real mad about Lower Manhattan and real worried that the stadium and the development's going to hurt Lower Manhattan. Everybody's saying Shelley's a poker player. He's just waiting for the opportune moment. He's going to cash in his chips before the Olympic Committee votes, going to vote for the stadium. That's one view. The other view is he's really ticked. He's mad at the mayor. The mayor blew it. The governor blew it. They ain't going to give him anything of value, and he's going to sink it. Now, your sense of the politics of all this?
Well, I really believe that what Silver says is true. He wants to wait to see what the judge in our case is going to do before he makes the decision. It's foolish to approve the project and then have it restrained or enjoined. And with elected officials, they don't want to make a decision they don't have to make. And so I think he's being wise, and I'm hopeful that we'll win the case, and we're going to know by June 2nd.
Okay, let's talk about the case briefly. You've laid out what your argument was. What are the possibilities? What can the judge say on the 2nd, and what's the implication?
Well, we think that he's a fair-minded man, and if he gets a chance to really look at the papers, he's going to decide that it was a bad process and there should be a do-over. That's what we say in Brooklyn. And
we used to do the same.
So, and I think that a do-over would benefit everybody, particularly the subway and bus riders, because what we need is money from the sale of that site. And there are a lot of factors that go into why the government sells something. So I know that if it's just a question of whether the Olympics is good or the mayor's plan is good, that's one thing. If it's a question that they didn't take the time and energy and staff work to decide which was the best bid, I think we win, and I'm hopeful that our issues will get serious consideration.
Now, if you win and therefore the Jets lose, the Jets don't go to the West Side Stadium and stay in New Jersey, and it's all your fault that we don't have a football stadium in New York.
Well, I've heard the theory that for the mayor it's win-win. It's either he gets the stadium or he gets to blame the gadflies that stopped it. But what I would say is that there's still a lot of debate and a lot of room for some development in Manhattan. The question is not will it happen, but when, and how will it be phased in. And so if I were the mayor, I wouldn't pick up my marbles and go away. I would try and work out a deal and do it better this time, a deal that respected Lower Manhattan and their need for office space and phased in the projects. And so my hope is that they go back to the drawing boards and are more sensible.
Okay. Let's talk about the West Street Tunnel. I mean, talking about the Straphangers and Nyberg's ability to affect public policy. Talk about the West Street Tunnel, the problems that you had in the resolution of it so far, as we know.
Well, part of the World Trade Center site plan was that they had proposed building a underground West Street near the site. And it would cost $860 million to build a 4-block tunnel, which would be the most expensive highway in human history. And the community opposed it, the community board opposed it, all elected officials opposed it, and the civic groups like mine opposed it for the main reason that it was a ton of money, and it would actually, in our view, be less secure. They shut the Battery Tunnel sometimes, the entrance at night, because they can't protect it. And it would cause traffic problems, and it would be very dangerous for the pedestrians who had to cross. And what happened was...
Wait a minute. Yeah. Who wants it?
The governor wanted it. He believed that it would create a more respectful climate for the memorial, and he had this money from the feds that he could spend.
So it's the governor. It's not the business community. It's no...
It was really the governor. And what was really interesting about it is that the community, like the Coalition to Save West Street, had fought for 3 years. We had an op-ed in the Times, we had community group meetings, we had public hearings, and they hung in there. It was one of the best groups I've ever seen locally. And then Goldman Sachs, the business, came along, and they wanted to build a new headquarters at what's called Site 26 in Battery Park City. And the tunnel, what's called the portal, where you have to go across the street. If you've ever been Park Avenue, they have a tunnel there, and it says don't cross here, very dangerous.
Please. Well, I mean, this is part of my exercise running through that intersection.
Well, so Goldman Sachs said that the tunnel should be either not done or moved 2 blocks so that people don't have to cross it.
Right.
And if you moved the way they wanted it, it would be right outside public schools. So I think there's a lot of hand-wringing, and then they decided to kill the project, which, by the way, saves like four or 500.
Who's they? The governor?
The governor. Just the whole thing is, he runs the show. He tells what to do.
Does this precede the NYPD's, public release of the NYPD security concerns?
It does, but it is part of a series of events downtown that have given people a lack of confidence in
the
where things are.
Goldman thing really was...
I'm hopeful they'll come back. Their business is needed. We need new office buildings downtown, and they don't have to worry now about the street in front of their property. They made their point. And so we'll see. And I like to savor victories. They're kind of few and far between for groups like ours. And so there's been a long history about the stretch of highway, the West Street from Midtown to downtown. The government, mainly the state government, has wanted to spend a lot of federal money to, gussy it up and make it fancy. And so there was Westway and Son of Westway.
Oh, please.
And now this tunnel. And I'm very proud that we've been part of all those battles, because the highway would have cost billions of dollars, and it's perfectly fine as it is now.
In fact, it's beautiful, and particularly with that and the combination of the parkland, it's fabulous.
And we have a vision. We'll see if it happens, that the downtown portion near Battery Park and back Battery Park City will eventually become something like the Champs-Élysées. There'll be outdoor cafes along the west side of the roadway, and open spaces on the east side of the roadway. And it has a lot of potential, but the tunnel would have killed everything. And so I'm very proud to work with
the Robert Moses approach.
It was, and you know what? And they had money. That was
building that money. Okay.
Yeah, they can get it off from the feds. And, I could tell you
we fought the Westway story. We don't want to go through that again.
All I was going to say is that there are thousands of other transportation uses for the money. And it's not clear where it's going to go now. But some of the TA projects downtown have gone over budget, which is not surprising. and there's a lot that could be done. So anyway, I feel great about that, and I consider it a done deal. I don't think it's going to revive itself. It's killed.
Good. We need that stake in that heart. Let's talk about some things more near and dear to my heart. Photo ban in the subways. Talk to me about this.
This has got to be the worst idea that the MTA has come up with in a long time. What they want to do is basically outlaw photography and camcorders in the subways, even though a thing to do in New York, whether you're a tourist or you live in the city, is to get on the train and take a picture of your family.
Are you kidding me?
I have a picture of my father from 1938 riding the number 2 out to New Lots. It's just historic. And so my hope is they proposed it in May of last year. It's almost at the year's point.
Why? Security?
Well,
I mean,
my own view is that they feel under a lot of pressure to do things to make the subway more secure, and so doing something symbolic. I'm trying to give the benefit of the doubt is a good step, and also some of the people at transit live in a hermetically sealed bubble where they don't understand a lot about their customers.
So it seems a profound ignorance.
I think there's a good compromise that could. I mean, nobody should be taking pictures of dispatcher stations or the area in between the tunnels, and you could outlaw those areas, but trains and standing on a platform, being near a token booth, it's human nature. And you know, it's very sad, but the subways are a melting pot of New York, which means that sometimes officers pick on people because of the way they look or the way they behave, and so it's not fair. And they selectively enforce the law, even now, as we speak, because there is no rule. The rule is you can take pictures in the subways.
Right.
I take pictures in the subways.
Right. I've done video in the subways.
Yeah, so, you know, and it's a place of free speech and expression. They're like the streets. You know, you're there and you want to. We hand out leaflets in the subways. Is how we communicate with the riding public.
Right, and also it is such a cinematic place. I mean, I think in Grand Central Station in the Transit Museum they've got clips of great
while they were
movies in the subways.
And while they were recommending the photo ban, they had an exhibition at the Grand Central Terminal about famous photographers' pictures of the subways.
Come on,
it's art.
It is, and the moving of the trains themselves are art.
So we're waiting to hear back from them. I know a lot of artists and photographers who are poised to pounce, and we're waiting to see if they'll produce a compromise. It's now almost a year since they were first proposed, so I'm crossing my fingers, and I hope that we'll get a good deal from them.
Well, they'll forget it.
Yeah.
Toll booth closings. Are we going to see toll booths closed? Are we going to see subway stations closed? Are we going to see bus lines cut back? Are we not going to be 24/7 all across the borough city anymore?
The station booths are a really interesting story. The short version of it is that in 2000, 5 years ago, the MTA wanted to close them without a hearing.
Right.
And so we sued, and we got a judge to order that they had to hold hearings, and so they agreed. They held hearings, and what happened? A huge number of people came out and said, "You're killing our neighborhood, the business district. You know, you're taking the life out of our." And
what did they do?
Well, what happened this one I consider a partial win. The first year around we lost. They proposed closing 177 booths, and when the smoke cleared, they closed 65, with Calico saying that they had heard from their customers. I considered the closings a very bad thing, but we did stop a lot of them. Mm-hmm. Then in 2005, they had another round, I think 164 stations, mm-hmm. and when the smoke cleared on that, they agreed to convert the toll booth operators from being inside a bulletproof glass case with a bad announcer to being customer service agents who roam the station and were out. And I know there are a lot of people who are cynical about that, but my view is that it's having someone away from you and separated from you is not as good as a human being who can help a disabled person down the stairs or show someone how to use the machines, which I think are very good, or hand out maps or brochures. And so anyway, the promise they've made, we'll see if they keep it, is to close none of the token booths, to keep them in place physically and have people now roam outside the booths, which is a very different job than the one that people were serving.
My only concern was those, in some of our neighborhoods still, despite the decreases in the crime rate, going out there alone at 2 o'clock in the morning might not be the wisest thing either. There's safety for them. Is that a union issue?
Well, it should be an issue for everybody, but it certainly is an issue for the union. I think it's critical to develop what they say they are, radios and communication systems. And you know what? We riders have to go outside of the booth when we go down to the station. So should the working people. And I think it's a better job. You know, vending transit, selling these cards is repetitive and episodic. There are long stretches that are really boring. And now I think they're going to feel much more rewarded. And I understand that the riding public isn't always the best behaved sometimes. You know, people get angry at the system, and so that is a problem. But I think some of that will go away with the clerks being available to the public. People will see them more as human beings. So anyway, I consider it a big victory. We went from no hearings on booths to all the remaining booths kept open with these clerks roving the stations. And to me, that's a good outcome.
But they have to be led kicking and screaming, and you folks and other groups prodding and prodding and prodding.
It was not an easy process. But, you know, this was interesting because on some issues, I feel like, you know, we're fighting the good fight, but not with a lot of people. On the booths, I was amazed.
Oh, yeah.
Every politician, all these community groups, they all stood up and they were extremely strong. And for me, it was a triumph of the hearing process and of city politics, because the public authority definitely wanted to close those booths and thought it wasn't a big deal. And in essence, they lost. They had to do something they weren't planning to do.
We Straphangers are appreciative of your advocacy. Okay, before we close, we got a minute. Look 5 years down the line. What would Gene Russianoff, both as a public advocate and a transit rider, want in the subway system?
Well, I'd say continued progress, buying new subway cars and buses and fixing track and stations. People will notice those kind of things. You know, good discounts on the fare card so that people want to ride the system. And I would hope there would be progress on a Second Avenue subway so that in my lifetime, it's not a joke, but something that's more real and serves the city.
Odds of this happening?
Well, you know, I would have said 10 years ago, like 0. And now I think they're much more substantial, and there's a constituency for it. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if this is an issue in the 2006 elections for governor.
Excellent. I want to thank you for making those odds less onerous than they otherwise might be, and thank NYPIRG and Straphangers, and I'm sure we will talk again.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you.